Go for it. Oh no, I agree because I found like now at this point in my life, I think that like I'll think about stuff from years ago and I'm like, oh, like we talked about this before where it's like, oh, now everything makes sense and you kind of see through all the stuff. And that's why they say, I think I told you the other day, I'm like, once you are awakened, you can't go back because now you see everything totally different than most people. And that's why so many people aren't living happy lives is because they don't see the things that we do. So then we become to most people outsiders until that person, kind of like or that group of people. Because like everyone has like we talk about the veil has been lifted and is being lifted. There's a lot of people that still don't choose to see it. You know?
Well, the thing is, the veil's thinner than it's ever been on this planet, and more and more people are more awake than it's ever than there's ever been in the history of humanity. And the thing is like we're no better than anybody else, right? But everybody wakes up at their own time. It's kind of like I've said it before, like that commercial where like you have like all these people like all the it's I think it's a cell phone commercial. I think it's Verizon or something like that where there's all these lights popping on. I feel like that's the true thing happening right now. Is like there's more and more people waking up. Um, but the thing is we all have we're on our own journey. So everybody's kind of like but we're all interconnected. But everybody kind of wakes up their own time. But it's kind of like we were just talking about a little bit ago, is that people are still holding on to the old way of thinking because they don't know any better. They're programmed, right? Like we're all programmed. And so like, we've just chosen to reprogram the way we see life. And so because the veil is becoming thinner, I think more people, it's easier for people to start to see through it, right? And so now we understand like, hey, like we can actually create, we co-create, we are very powerful. Um, we have so much power within us, and that's why I always go back to, if you want to go biblical, like Jesus said, least among me can do what I do or greater. And I always tell people it's like it's because he was trying to say like, hey, like look, I can heal people, so can you. Like I can we were talking about earlier, telepathy. I've had so many instances in my life where I'm like deeply thinking about somebody. And that's where like meditation comes in, like hyper focus, right? So you hyper focus on like a person or a situation, and all of a sudden it's like you get a text or a call or something happens, and you're like, wow, this is crazy. Like normally you see it as in like I always say like coincidence, but the coincidence is like Wayne Dyer said, it's two things that coincide. Like there's no such thing. It's a synchronicity. It all works together. And I've seen that happen over and over in my life. And like you said, like, you've seen things, you can look back on your life. I look back on my life and I'm like, wow, like all the dots connect, you know, even when I thought it was something that I didn't want to have happen in my life. In that moment, my human mind was like in that primal state, that survival state. And I'm like, why is this going on? But it's like now I look back and I'm like, that was there to help me. Okay, cool. And then now I use that to help other people, you know.
Yeah, man. Like
So there.
imagine if everybody at the same time was like that. Like the world would be totally different. Like what you just said, like, yeah, I was thinking the same thought I had that day. I was like, wow. Like I was thinking back because sometimes I get reminded of like being in the army and stuff of certain things, and I'm like, wow, I am totally different now. You know?
You know what's crazy? Is just because you brought up the army. I just want to talk about this for a second because I just watched it because I had a friend the other day. Hacksaw Ridge,
Yeah.
the movie. Yeah. So I had my buddy the other day. He's like, "Hey, have you ever watched that movie?" I said, "No," and I heard the name, but I never watched it. So then I literally took a chance this weekend to watch it. Great movie, amazing story. Um, I love the guy's faith, and what the message to me that showed is like, if you have a complete and utter faith in what you believe in, like especially like if it's for the good, like you're gonna do some great stuff, right? And that also takes me back to like when we talked about manifestation earlier, like when you manifest something, right? Like if you speak something out and like it's a desire in your heart, and it's like, man, I really want to bring this thing to fruition. If you have that much unwavering faith, guess what's gonna happen? That's gonna come to fruition. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
the power that we have. And see, I don't think he understood that back then. But that is the power that we have. And that's what I try to tell people is like that is the power we have inside of us is that we can create anything we want, when we want, how we want, and you know, all for good. Of course, there's always dark and light, and there's always, you know, yin and yang. So there's always good and bad. But I mean, like we do have the power to create so much good. So like you just said, like imagine if we're all just creating the good and we all understand that, like, dude, this world can almost instantaneously be like nothing but a ball of light.
You
Like
wouldn't even,
so
yeah, you
amazing.
wouldn't even recognize, you wouldn't even recognize it. You're like, it's like all these millionaires who are like, I just focused on this one thing and I just had to make it and I had to make it, and then they make it. And like we were talking about earlier, it doesn't, maybe it won't happen in 2 minutes, but they make it because what you just said, they freaking believed in it 100%.
It's
You know,
hyper
and that's why
focused.
so
Like,
many
you know, I
people are like working all these crappy jobs and they're like, I can't get ahead in life. It's because they keep telling themselves that they can't, you know?
I was just listening to one of the podcasts that I, you know, enjoy listening to the other day, and his name's Jess Breet. His first name's Jess Breet, the guy that was the guest, and he's very into financial, you know, advice. And he was saying, he goes, you know, he goes, you can literally create whatever you want. He goes, but it's like that, it's that focus on what you want to create and what you're trying to create. But most people like falter on it all the time, you know, like I'm going to be financially free. And then 2 minutes later, they're like, no, it's not going to happen. Like you said, it's like, no, you can't do that. Like you have to understand, like literally, you can create whatever you want, but it's going to take, and it's not always going to take a ton of time, but it can, right? It can take a month, it can take 6 months, it can take 2 years. But if you put the focus on that, you can get there. But the other thing is what do you intend? My thing is, what do you intend to do with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you just want to go buy 10 houses and like, you know, just be greedy? I mean, because at the end of the day, that may or may not happen because you're just not, you don't have good intent, you know?
Well, yeah, you know what I believe though is that like, so me and my wife have been watching The Walking Dead, right? And there's a lot of like spiritual and biblical type stuff in that show if you pay attention, and you're not just like, oh, zombies, zombies. But like, uh, it's exactly what you're saying is like, if you do something with ill intent, eventually it's going to come back to you. So like, for example, making a business just because you want to be a hot shot and control people or whatever and be the big boss. Like there's examples of that in that show where the guy who's controlling everybody, he's doing good things just to control everybody, but then he starts to lose it and everybody starts to basically figure it out. And that's the same thing. Like like you talk about, it's based off the intent of your heart. So if you're doing something with bad intent, even though it's a good thing, it's eventually gonna crumble on you.
It will always crumble. Yeah. You know, it's funny you say The Walking Dead. It's funny because I have watched that show. I haven't like followed it continuously or anything like that. But the one thing I've always told people, my ex used to watch it, and I would say, like I said, yeah, I said, do you know what all those zombies are? And she's like, what? And I said, they are society.
Yeah.
And she's like, I never looked at it that way. I said, yeah. I said, that's society following each other. Like, hey, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Hey, this is the cool thing, the good thing. And they're all following themselves into like off the cliff, basically. You know what I'm
Damn.
saying?
So we're like the survivors, bro. We're awakened and we're
Yeah.
like, what is everybody
Yes,
else
that's
doing?
that is what I got from it. So when I watched it, I was like, hmm. So you have the larger group of people falling themselves off the cliff, and then you have this like awakened group that's like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And so I tell people, you know, and I'm not trying to put anybody down or judge anybody because guess what? Like, you know, everybody wakes up at their own time. But my biggest, I guess, my biggest
Sorry, I'm just writing stuff
thought
down here.
behind, no, you're fine. No, my biggest thought behind it you know, I want everybody to wake up. I really do. I mean, I pray about it every day. I send it out every day because I want everybody to understand, like, you know, we're all interconnected. We're all one. So I want everybody to come together. Let's all be one. Let's all be a team. Let's all help each other because we all have amazing gifts. And that's the other thing I tell people is like you have to understand this thing too, is that there will never be like another Nate, right? There'll never be another Brian. Like our souls are eternal, but like you and your body, me and my body, and the purposes that we have here will never repeat. But there you may come back to experience other things, but it'll never be the same thing. And so I try to tell people like, so while you're here, try to go within yourself and feel what your deepest desires and passions are, and use that to serve this world, because that's what you're here for. The unfortunate thing is, again, like I said, people really like, just they see society saying this is the way to live, this is the way to do things, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And I tell people like, but does that sit with you? No. I was just to touch back on what I was talking about with Jaspreet. He said he was talking about like numbers, which, statistics, they are what they are. He was saying about 82% of Americans can't stand what they're doing and are unhappy with life. 82%.
Yeah, so imagine how
That
much
is a
negative
that is
energy
that is
around.
that that is a high, unfortunate number for us to be living in this country, and people hate what they do. And that's why, like, when I coach my clients, and I'm like, okay, so you're doing this job and you hate it. Yeah. You've been in it for 20 years. Yeah. So why are you still there? What do you want to do? I tell people, if you want to go bake bread and create a bakery, then go do it. Like, it's not about the fact that you may not become a millionaire tomorrow, but you're gonna love what you do every day. You're gonna serve people deeply because you love them and you love what you're doing, and then you're always gonna be taken care of, right? But we're conditioned to believe you have to go do this job, this career to live a good life. I don't know how many. Again, I've said this in the past. As a former paramedic, I don't know how many doctors I saw and I became friends with that hated their jobs. They went into it because family led them into it, or somebody led them into it, or whatever, college, whatever it was, and they hate their job. And I'm like, so you're not even here giving your all because you're not passionate about this, you know? And then the other thing is that Josh Reed said, which I'm going to say this on the financial aspect, is the people that are employees in this country are paying the highest taxes. So if you're a doctor and you're making 500 grand a year, you're paying out half of your income to taxes,
Yeah.
right? If you're a business owner, you're only paying about 20% tax, and you get to claim so many other things. And so what I say about that is, yes, because I have a business, but the thing is with that is, so you have a business, you're doing what you love, you get to claim things. It's not even about the taxes. I don't look at my business as like tax. I don't care about the tax write-off. It comes at the end of the year. I give that to my tax person. It's done. My thing is I'm doing what I love. I'm ultimately financially probably going to like benefit a little bit more, right? But I'm doing what I love, and I'm serving people on the deepest level that I possibly can.
Right, you're not doing it just because you want a fast car and a
No,
mansion,
no,
and like you
no. I
truly
no,
want to
and
do things to help people, and
I tell people all the time. I'm like, you know what? I'm 42 years old. I've had nice cars, nice trucks, homes, all that crap. I'm like, you know what? Guess what? It's all blessing. It's all great. I'm grateful for it. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to, before I exit this life, be able to be like, hey, damn, I made a difference.
dude,
You know,
yeah,
I'd
I
rather
mean
have
that's the
people come to
biggest
my,
part,
I'd rather have people come to my funeral and be like, hey, this dude helped me. Like he was awesome. Instead of, oh, he had 10 houses and he had fucking 25 cars. Like, who cares?
dude. Yes, that is probably like, man, if more people thought like that, like, so my wife was watching freaking Jersey Housewives when I came home, right? And I can't stand it, and I know why. It's based on what we're talking about right now, because and just one thing I overheard was you got a largest house with the 16 bathrooms, and it's like, who? There's three people who live in the house. I'm like, on what world do you need a house that big with 16 bathrooms, bro? Like, imagine it's just like I think it was George Carlin or something. He was bitching about golf courses. And it's like, oh, we have all these acres of land so you can hit a ball into a hole and miss, but all these people are homeless. It's kind of like, what if we just tweaked it a little? We just actually try to help other people instead of just going for all these luxuries that we can't take with us when we die anyway.
Well, yeah, and I go into like, and I'm never putting anybody down. If you gain what you gain, you get it. Cool, whatever. But I think it was one of the Lil Wayne songs where he was like, I think he said I have 10 bathrooms and I shit all day, and I'm like, you're literally not gonna shit in all 10 bathrooms. If you do, you're slightly fucking not there, you know? And so that's my thing. It's like, what's the point? And so like that's what I try to tell people. Like, if you're buying this mansion to house like you, your family, like all these people, okay, great. Otherwise, you're doing it because you're insecure. You
It's
probably have a
ego,
little
bro.
weenie. You have a little weenie, and you're just insecure with yourself. Like, yeah, and it's ego. And I'm like, so what are you worried about? Why are you buying something that big for you and one other person or two other people or four other people, whatever it is? Like, it doesn't matter, right? And so that's my thing is like, and again, I'm very different than a lot of people. I've never had that want. I've never had that need. For me, it's like, hey, I'd rather have, and something I speak out all the time is like having, a plot of land, 4 acres, having three houses on it, have my home, me and my future wife, and I love my mom. She's very close to me, live with me, and then two other homes for like some of my kids, and then we're good. Like I'm good. Like I don't need all this crazy stuff. Um, cars. I've had cars are liabilities. I tell people what are assets and where are liabilities, right? Cars are liabilities. They don't give you anything. Like at the end of the day, you drive that new fucking Benz off the fucking lot. That bitch just cost you money the minute you drove off the lot.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, um, I tell people I'm like, I have a paid off Lincoln MKZ. I'm happy with that. It's a nice car. It's paid off. I love it. It's good. Treats me right. I'm good. I'd rather do that all day because guess what? In my past, I would see a new truck. I would see this. I would see that, and there we go. Let me go buy these things. Oh, it's so great. And then now I have like $1,000 payment between the fucking payment and the insurance, and I'm like, yeah, that's stupid. Even though I could afford it, but it was dumb. That was a waste of money. Um, and so I tell people, like, like, what is it that you truly want to do in this life? Like, so you could put that finance towards creating something that if you really want to serve people, go serve them, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and even a home, like what I've learned from some of my financial mentors is like, hey, owning a home for yourself is really not beneficial because you're not really going to benefit from it unless you like sell it in however many years and then make some money off of it. The best investment you can do is have homes as rentals, Airbnbs, long-term rentals, whatever, and then you place them just right to receive like to pay all the bills and to receive the return. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and you can still help people deeply in that too. If you're sitting well financially, shit, you can help people that are like struggling. You can say, hey, I'm gonna give you this home for really cheap or whatever the case is. That's the way I look at it. But but yeah, I just feel like but what I do see, I do understand is that the materialistic aspect of this world is starting to fade away. We're switching over more to humanity and people, us coming together. So I think that a lot of them, not saying materialism is going to go away completely, and there's nothing wrong with the fact that if you're serving and you're loving, and then like the universe just like gives you all this like abundance, nothing wrong with that. But also, how can you use that to serve other people,
Dang, that might
right?
end. That might be the thing that ends the wars, bro.
I'm telling you. I mean, the universe may reciprocate so much good to you, and then what can you do to help so many folks? So that's what I look at. I mean, I always look at myself and I'm like, hey, the more abundance I get, like, how much more change can I make? I mean, that's my thought, but that's the way my heart's always been that way. I know I lost weight, obviously, throughout my life. I lost weight for that, but I've come back to it and understand it. And I'm like, hey, if I become extremely well, when I become extremely wealthy, like, how many people can I help? So,
Yeah, that's what my mindset is, and it's like when I am wealthy, I will not have a house with 16 bathrooms. Like that is, dude. Like just think about. So like I think it like money. we're taught on the concept of money, and it makes me think of war because honestly, the United States is a war machine, and that's what makes all the money. So there's a specific thing happening.
Thank you. Sorry, not to cut you off, but thank you for saying that because war is a war machine. It's all money maker. That's all it is.
Yeah, dude, that's why, like, they're talking about automatic draft and all this bullshit, and I'm like, you know what? I served, I did my thing. I'm not going to allow my son to be victim to rich politicians' wants. And it's like, it makes me think with all the current events, I'm like, are we the bad guys? Because there's been peace deals in certain parts of the world that are being talked about as long as certain conditions are met, which aren't really that crazy. And there's corruption. And then the West is like, nope, it's false, not going to happen. It's fake news, whatever. And it's like, are we? So what are you really? What's really going on? And that's I think that's why they're worried because the veil's lifting and now all this information, like information's coming out about a lot of things, like COVID, like all this other crap. And it's like a lot of people are like, you know what? Something doesn't sound right here. Like, how are we constantly always at war? How are we always like that's not what we're here for?
But you're 100% right. Like that's the thing is that people are understanding that it's all bullshit. Like I said, we've said it before on this podcast, but like I said, like, dude, it's all a game, man. It's all a game. It's all a money game. But that's the thing, though, is more and more people are waking up, which I'm so grateful for. And they're seeing through the veil, and they're like, wait a minute, none of this shit makes sense. And I tell people, do you know that they're just trying to cause distraction, right? Whether like so 100% distraction, whether it's through politics, you know, oh, Trump and Biden and all these different things, they're just trying to cause distraction. The wars, it's a war machine, make money, but let's cause distraction. They don't want people to be aware because the veil is lifting. They know that people are starting to wake up, so they're like, "Oh shit! So what do we do now?" And that's exactly. I was just having this conversation with mom earlier. I said, they are literally reaching for straws. That's all they're
Yeah,
doing.
it's so
Like
obvious
they're
too.
reaching for. Oh, dude, it's 100%. Like to everybody. Everybody sees it. They're reaching for straws. Like, oh my god, like we're fucking losing control. Everything's yeah. I'm like, dude, if I were them, I'd be like, hey, wait, raise the white flag because everything's over. Like you're
Dude,
fucking done,
it's
dude.
just it
Like
relates
you're fucking.
it relates right back to what we were talking about earlier. If you build something based off of bad intent or greedy intent or whatever, then it's going to crumble eventually. And I think we're at that point now where it's getting close to some type of breakthrough. I don't know.
Oh no, it's already there, man. It's already happening. It's just not like it doesn't happen just overnight, but it could, but it doesn't just happen overnight. And that's what I tell people is like, like you have to understand, like, so it's funny because like all these conversations with some of my clients and they're like, oh my gosh, like this, that, and the other's going on. And I was like, you understand those are all distractions. Then I try to show them like the bigger picture, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't see it that way. I'm like, that's the point. I was like, for years, I didn't either. Like, I always had a feeling inside of me that things back when 9/11 happened, like, I had this thing inside of me. I used to discuss this with people, and I was like, there's some weird shit going on. Like, there's just stuff that doesn't make sense. And, but I was only like 18 or 19 or whatever it was when it happened. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Dude, now I'm like, I knew what was going on back then. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like this is a game, and it's nothing but like a dramatic game. And the more that we understand the power that we have and that what's actually going on, the more we fucking like come together and create the world that we're intended to have. This
Yeah,
is the
man.
thing.
Like think about when you get in an argument with someone or you're fighting, or even like I use war as an example because that's the most extreme example, but uh it's the easiest one to use because it's like you're both doing what you believe is right, but you're both the same. Like enemy and or your quote unquote enemy. Like Wayne Dyer says, we have no enemies.
No, 100%.
You know?
But that's the thing though. But do those people? and maybe they do, maybe because their programming actually think what they're doing is right. Because I have to disagree and say that like the leaders, quote unquote leaders, which are shit here in the United States, they know what they're doing. It's a money game, dude.
Yeah, it's just
They know
like
what they're
that.
doing.
It's just like that
They know
Jordan
what they're doing.
Maxwell quote I shared with you,
Yeah,
where everything is a just a masterful plan for us to serve the masters. You know?
exactly what I told. Exactly. When you said that, what did I say? We have been conditioned to be enslaved for years, but the fact of us being enslaved is now falling apart because more and more people are awakening. So I'm so grateful for it. I truly believe this is one of the best times to be a human in this whole history. And of course, we're a soul having a human experience, which I love. Our souls chose to be here at this time. And I love it because I know for a fact, like I keep telling people, and a lot of people just like they don't understand it because they're like, "Oh my God, there's so much stuff going on." I tell people we are living in the best times ever because watch, give it just. I believe in my soul. I feel it a short period of time. I think in the next fuck, I don't know, year, maybe less, maybe just a bit more. Like humans are gonna be living so beautifully, and all this bullshit's gonna be gone.
Yeah, because
You
yeah,
know,
just think about it. It
that's
seems
my
like
thought.
yeah, no, because I feel like there's a lot of tension right now, and people are just kind of like dealing with it. But I think it's gonna get like it's already gotten to the point where people have just had enough because it's trickled down from like higher institutions to even to your household now. So it's like, when is enough enough? Like, no, we're not going to follow your BS. And
And
that's
I all and it,
it's so
yeah,
complex, but it's so simple because it's everything that's pushed in our face every day.
and I always go back to the old saying, it's always darkest before the dawn, right? It always is. Like I can go into my own life and look at my own life and be like, man, like things seem like it was like, man, why are things like breaking down? What's going on? Blah blah blah, like all this shit. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, everything takes off, and I'm like, okay, I had to go through that breakdown, and that's the thing. It's like you have to remove the old before you place the new, right? You have to knock out the old cabinets before you put the new ones in. So like how is it like we have to go through that. So that's what we're doing right now. Like in this country and in the whole, I think as the world, uh, we are getting rid of all the old and we're taking over the new. And I love it because I'm so excited to see what's coming for all of us. Like I really am. I'm really optimistic. I'm really excited. I really believe there's so much good coming for us. Um, and I have no fear. I have no worry because I'm like, man, you guys don't understand. Like, there's so much good coming for us, you know, um, because we have so much divine intervention. That's the thing too. Is
Oh
I think
yeah,
that because people fear because of news and religion and all these goofy things, I tell people I'm like, no, like you have to understand, like we are in a time of great transition and it's divine intervention, right?
dude, that's what I don't like. There, that whole thing that you just said, I 100% believe it because I believe in divine intervention, and it's like, yeah, you can like if you're and not to say this in an ego way, but if you're at the level that me and Brian are at, you'll see things a lot differently, like spiritually, like anything. It could be something with the government, it could be something in the news, politics. You're like, oh, like right now, everybody's having to answer for all the shit that happened during COVID. And like, and I was saying it the week it hit. I'm like, people are gonna have to pay for this because this is evil shit. And now everyone's like
Oh,
tucking their tail, like, "Oh, we never said that," lying to Congress and all this shit. And I'm like, and that's just one example, right? And not to count all the other crazy shit that you see every day. But it's like, yeah, like what I was gonna say when you said that, the first thing that came to mind is like, I don't understand people who don't believe in anything. Like, you don't believe that there's any type of divine intervention in your life ever, you know?
and I guess you have to look at that as I get what you're saying because I tend to feel the same way. You know, because I've never come to a place where I've always my whole life, 42 years, believed that I was always being divinely led. Um, but I think there are people that, you know, whether it's through family, through instances, through situations where, I've met people where they're like, well, if my dad's ex-girlfriend was an example. She went through some hard times, losing family and things like that. And she was like, if God's real, then why did I go through this? And I said, you have to understand. And I explained to her, like, like everybody has a finite time in this body, and we're all here for a season. And I kind of explained it to her. After I explained it to her, and we had several talks. It kind of helped her see. But I don't judge people for not believing, but I do believe that everybody that doesn't believe at some point
Yeah.
is brought into a situation where they have to believe. Not have to, but where they're like, oh shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm
And that's
trying
what
to
I tell
say.
people.
Like, I'm not judging them. I guess I'm trying to say, like, I don't understand it, but I do, but I don't, because it's like, how can you live
Well,
this
because you
life
have to.
and like not realize it, you know?
Well, no, of course, yeah, no, I know, and I'm the same way because I've always believed, right? But I think there are a lot of people that like that have been through whatever it is. Usually, is from my understanding, it's usually people like that have gone through trauma, that are like, oh, well, if I had a God, then why is And I'm like, hey, like if you lost a kid at 3 years old, like so. For example, I had a client, her son was run over at 3, and and her and I had many conversations, many over probably a 2 year period. Um, me being a paramedic in the past and me experiencing all the shit I experienced, and I saw those things happen over and over. Um, we had a lot of talks, and then as I grew spiritually, like deeply, we had talks, and it finally helped her. It took a while, but it finally helped her see that he was only supposed to be here for those 3 years. Um, I get it because thank God I never lost any of my kids at an age like that, or any of my kids at all. But I have learned that we are here for a finite time, and I tell people like we're only supposed to come to this life. Not everybody's supposed to be here for 100 years, right? Some people are here for 6 months. Some people are here for, 3 years. Some people are here for 70 years. Doesn't matter because our souls come to the body for just for their purpose, and then we leave,
Yeah.
right?
Like everything's a lesson in that way.
Yes, everything has a purpose, but we do, as the human mindset, because what we're programmed with, we think that we're all supposed to be here till we're old, and we're all supposed to have all these experiences. And I tell people that's just not the case, man. And that's why, like, I tell my family all the time, my kids, everybody, I was like, hey, like, I don't know how long I'll be here. I was like, I'm 42. I may only be here another day. I mean, who knows? And my family always tells me, like, well, why would you say that? I was like, because I don't know how long I'm supposed to be here. Like, I, I'm open to whatever I'm supposed to do. And I think that being a paramedic taught me that. And then as I grew spiritually, it taught me even more. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. Because as a paramedic back then, even though I was spiritual, but I wasn't like where I'm at now, I used to see kids die, and I'd run on them and I try to help them and they die. And I'm like, gosh, like, what the fuck? Like, this shouldn't happen. But I realized at one point, I'm like, that's all they were supposed to be here for, you know? Their soul's eternal, but the body was only supposed to be here for that moment. Um, And so it is hard for most humans to understand that. But I tell people like, I want to help you see it because you have to understand like, it's not this one like finite way of living. Like that's
Yeah.
just not what we're here for. You know, we're not supposed to all be here for 100 years. We all have a purpose. Like this child's death could teach this 20,000 people this one thing, right?
Yeah. Then
So why
people,
is that a
you say
bad thing?
something like that, and people would still be like, "God's cruel," blah blah blah. You know?
But I'm okay with people's judgments because I tell people, and as I have gone through that with people, so think about this, and it is a different, obviously a totally different concept, but I guess semi-different concept. Um, I've gone through groups with people where say a woman has been raped, right? And we talk about like, hey, like fucking like healing and doing all these things. And I've done that where I've not even done it intentionally. Like I've gone through a healing meditation and I've expressed to people like, hey, like say somebody's been raped, and I've had women like start bawling, and I'm like, hey, like it's not. I wasn't saying that to direct anything. I'm just trying to get you to heal from that. And then they focus on it, and they're like, oh my God, okay, I can focus and heal on this. Yes, because
Yeah, because they've been avoiding it or dealing with it, and then
yes,
when you confront
yes.
it, like not,
Once you
it's
sit
not to
in it,
say
once
that
you
it's an
sit in it,
excuse or like you should be like, oh, la da da da. That's not what we're
no.
saying.
Well,
But
no,
yeah,
I tell people like I never tell people you never for you don't do it like for like, oh, it was okay for that you did that. No. And I tell people forgiveness. When I do my forgiveness meditations, I tell people like, I want you to see that person in your mind, and I want you to tell them that you forgive them. And I walk them through that in a meditation. And a lot of people have a hard time with it. And I tell them, I was like, listen, this is not for them. This is for you. This is for you. Like you have to allow that forgiveness, because if you don't, you will always harbor that hate. That's going to turn into a negative energy inside your body, and you'll never come to a place where you're fully free.
yeah.
So when people finally understand that, they're like, oh. And in North Carolina, man, I had multiple experiences with things like that where women were like letting things go and weeping and letting it go. And then when I would go back a month later, like let's go have a group again, and they were like, dude, like I feel totally different. I'm like, that's the point. Because you were harboring that. And I understand it because you went through a traumatic experience and that just sucks. Now, I'm not downplaying it. What I tell people is that you but if you don't ever forgive it, like you'll never move forward, you know? And that's the same thing like when it comes to losing a child. Like if you lost a child and you're trying to live life and you're just going to do your job, do your stuff, whatever, but you never ever forgave and released and understood the fact that that child needed to just be here for those however many years, you will live in hell forever. That's why I tell people that you can either live in hell or live in heaven on earth. It's your choice. So when it comes to religion, they say live in hell, live in earth. No, I'm like, look, I'm telling you right now, what they were talking about biblically is that you can live in heaven or hell on earth. So, like, whatever you go through, at some point you have to forgive and let go of.
Well, yeah, it's like you just said when we
I've
were
I've
talking
learned
about
it
earlier.
myself, man.
Yeah, like what we were talking about earlier, we're talking about we're creators. So if we harbor on to negative energy, we're just going to keep creating. Even we're not going to realize it because you just focus on this bad thing that happened, which isn't downplaying it, like you said, but it's true. Like we're creators, so we can create our own life that we want to live if we truly free ourselves from things that hold us back. And then but some people feel guilty when they're like, oh well, I feel guilty if I think there's like a subconscious guilty feeling for something like that. Like for example, if a parent loses a child, I feel like there's
Well,
underlying there's little micro things you have to work on.
absolutely. Think about you being in military. I mean, you probably I don't think you experienced this, but how many military people experience survivor's remorse, right?
I think I had a little bit of it, yeah.
And so it was like I told you about the guy that I good friends with in right here in the valley in California. Um, his Humvee got blown up. The other three guys in his Humvee died, and he lived, right? And he and I years later became friends. And once we started hanging out, and he started telling me the story, I told him I sat with him and I was like, listen, did you blow the Humvee up? No. Did you anticipate that happening? No. I was like, why the hell would you carry their deaths because you are here for a reason. You are here for a purpose. Because
Yeah.
if you weren't here for a purpose, you would have been gone with them. Your time would have been done, you know? And he would call me, and I loved it. I didn't mind it at all. He'd call me middle of the night with like night terrors and all these things, and I sit up and talk to him, and hey, blah blah. Blah. I meet him for beers, do whatever, and eventually he came to a place where he like let it go. He was like, dude, he's like, I never thought I'd let it go. I was like, yeah, bro. I was like, this is not your weight. That's a human mind telling you this is your weight. It's not your fucking weight, bro. You
Yeah.
know, you did everything you could for them, but there was nothing you could do when the Humvee blew up. Like, what the fuck could you do? Like, you're done. And so that's what I try to tell people. It's like, and thankfully, like when I was a SWAT medic, like I never lost anybody, but I do remember the one experience of shooting somebody. And even that like was odd. But I realized like we had to because of the situation. So I released myself because I was like, hey, we had to. Like the way it went down, like we had to, or else we were gonna die. So I never want to hurt anybody. I always want to be peaceful with people. But like I tell people, like, but you have to look at life, man. And then beyond all that shit, my thing is, like I said, like majority of the time, the shit that happens is people die. Especially as a medic, I saw, people die, spouses die, kids die, like family, whoever. Especially when it's like when it was like in a wreck or something like that, because it's unexpected. You know,
Yeah, it seems like it's totally random.
it seems
And
like it's totally like fuck, man. Like I can't believe this happened. And I tell people, but you know that was in a divine plan. You know, that person was supposed to go. That person was supposed to be like moved on. And it sucks. I know because when I was young, I lost a couple people, and I was thinking like, fuck. Like before I even understood what I understand now, I was like, fuck. Like I saw it, and I was like, that's not fucking right. Like blah blah all this shit. And I look back on it, and I'm like, nah, it actually was like divine time. Like it was their time, I guess. And they were here for what they were here for. You know, um, and it's just hard for our human mind to accept it.
yeah, because I think like we talk about material stuff, we're so focused on the physical world that, when you see someone, like for example, when a police officer, they make a post and it's like, oh, their end of watch was this. I think a lot of times, like that's still a sad thing, of course, unfortunate, and could. I think the problem with, I would say with most people is like when we think about death, we think about it, like I said, in the physical sense and logical sense. So we're like, oh, it could have been prevented, or it could have been this way. But then what you just
Yeah.
said, like, well, yes, it's sad, but there's a higher purpose to everything, you know? And it's just like I
So
think
that's
people have
why.
a hard time wrapping their mind around it.
That's why, like I said, I always try to explain to people that and it's hard. It's hard to explain to people that don't have the open mind to it. Is when I tell them like, so okay, that person died at 20, right? Um, I always tell people like, because so I've had people that I've coached that have had like a family member that they were really close to that maybe died at like 20 years old. And they were like, so what if your family member died at 20? I said, don't get me wrong. I'd be upset. But I would also understand that that was their time frame in that body. And I know that I'm very different in that because of my studies in the last 7, 8 years of my life, I realized that that is what was supposed to happen. Like it doesn't mean I wouldn't be sad for a little bit. It doesn't mean I wouldn't be like, hey, but like I've learned like fuck, dude, they're supposed to die like at that point. Um and that's why I say like when I speak about me, my family never wants to hear it. But I'm like, if I died tomorrow, I was like, that was my time. And they're like, I don't want to hear that. My kids were like, I don't want to hear that. Like, that's not that. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I was like, that's fine. Don't listen to me then. I was like, but if I was supposed to, I would, you know, um, because we all have a finite time in this body. But like I tell people, our souls are eternal. So if I die tomorrow, that means that's the end of Brian Moles. But guess what? My soul's come back to do whatever it's supposed to do.
Coming
You
back
know?
as Ricky Bobby, baby.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Shake and bake. No, I
Come
think
back
that's a
to clear
good
shit up.
concept
You know?
because, uh, like for example, when I was born, my parents didn't know if I was. I think on the flip side of that too, if someone's supposed to die, they're going like if their time is up, you know, that's what's happening. But at the flip side, I think if someone's supposed to be here, they're gonna be here. So
Yeah.
like, for example,
When your
for me,
parents when you were born, your parents knew you were retarded.
no, they didn't know that till after because they're also retarded. But but yeah, the doc was like, I don't know, he looks fine to me. But no, like my parents didn't know if I was gonna make it. I was born premature, and they tell me all the time, "You're a miracle. You're gonna die." Blah 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 blah. They had to give me steroids and blood transfusions, all this crazy shit. And on the flip side of the polar opposite of that is it's the cycle. So like if someone's supposed to be here, no matter how many complications they have or medical or whatever, they're gonna be here. You know, even if they're
I
already an
mean, yeah,
adult, you know, or whatever.
I 100% agree because my daughter, she was born 2.5 months early. 2.5 months. She
So did I.
my yeah, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
See? Yeah. My daughter was born 2.5 months early. Yeah. My ex-wife had her 2.5 months early. She had a placenta abruption, and randomly we were in our apartment in San Jose, California. We were hanging out, watching a show, and then all of a sudden she's like, Brian, like I feel like a bunch of pain. And I was like, are you good? And she was like, I don't know. And then she's like, I had to go to the bathroom. I was like, all right, went to the bathroom, and then like blood, bro. And she was like, and I saw her like she was Hispanic, like beautiful Hispanic woman, and started to like turn white. And I was like, what the fuck? And like, at that time, of course, I wasn't in EMS, so I didn't understand anything. So I'm like looking at her, I'm like, what the fuck? And I go and like look at the toilet, and it's all this blood in the toilet. I'm like, oh shit. So I call 911. Um, AMR comes, which funny, which just the way things work. Like a year and a half later, I end up working at AMR. Um,
Yeah.
but we comes pick her up, and we take and we all go to the hospital. Um, and we get there, and they're like, yeah, we got to do emergency C-section, like all this shit. And I'm like, fuck. And I'm freaking out because I'm just like, like, oh my God. I'm like 20 years old, I think. And I was freaking out, and I remember like my brother-in-law shows up who lived there. His older brother-in-law, like he lives there, and we and I were cool. And he gave me a big hug, and I was like, dude, I was like, this is like I was tripping out. Um, and they were like, hey, you guys gotta stay out here. We're gonna take him to surgery. Like they did it, boom, boom, boom. And then they were like, yeah, she's alive, but she's like tiny. And I'm like, fuck. And I'm like freaking out, dude. I'm like, motherfucker. Take her to the NICU, and they get her stable and stuff, and they're like, hey, you guys can come see her. Tiniest little thing, man. But it was so crazy because she was like so small, 2.5 months early. Um, and so then my ex and I, like, we were like, we were still living at the apartment. We were doing these things like, hey, go back. We'd visit her every day. And it was crazy because it was like every day that little girl would get stronger. Like she was lifting her head off the fucking, like, she was in those little incubator things,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she was lifting her head like so quick. And like the NICU. Well, it's funny because now that I know having been a medic for all those years, I understand all of it. But they were like, yeah, they were like, her lifting her head like this is not fucking normal. Like this little girl shouldn't be doing this shit. And she was like lifting her head, doing all this shit, and I'm just like, she looked like a little fucking squirrel. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck is she doing? Swear to God, I was like, what the fuck is she doing? And she was just going, and we were like, damn. And the nurses were like, yeah, dude, we don't know. Like, fucking, like, this is way abnormal for kids this early. And she just kept doing it. And then she'd have her moments of like her heart rate would Brady down, whatever. Dude, within a couple, like, what I don't even think it was a couple months, a month and a half or whatever, 2 months maybe at most, we were able to take her home, and she just fucking exploded. And I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? And,
See, that's what I'm
now I look
saying,
at it.
man. That's amazing.
Now I look, it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's like it was meant to be. And like, she's at fucking USC. She's a fucking like a film major. She's fucking like doing film like right now, you know. And I'm like, God damn! I'm like this girl who shouldn't have lived according to what we're told is fucking creating films. I'm like, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, when I was born, my dad said he could hold me in the palm of his hand. Like
Yeah,
I was like a little monkey, basically, is what he said. And then, he was like the day I knew you were gonna, because I was in the NICU apparently. I think that's what it was, or whatever, like you said,
yeah,
and
NICU. That's what I said. NICU. That's where my daughter
or I
was.
might have been out of
Once
it by
what?
then.
Yeah. Well, because if you have issues, the minute after you're born, it's the NICU. So neonatal,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
neonatal NICU. Yeah.
But he said he was like the day I knew you'd be fine. He brought in. I still had it for the longest time. I think it might still be in my house that I grew up in. But he bought me this little dinosaur, this like stuffed dinosaur, like Brachiosaurus, like the long neck one. And he said he put it in my crib, and then you know how like you turn your back, but you can tell like you look back, right? So he turned his back to go walk away from me, and I opened my one eye. I was like kind of peeking, and then he turned around and I closed it real quick, and he's like, "That's when I knew you'd be fine."
Yeah.
It was kind of like a funny moment, like that cartoon moment where you're opening your eye,
Oh yeah.
but it's funny, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh
like
yeah.
that's what I'm saying, man. Like people, like think about we're talking about right now. Like when we talk about energy, we talk about why we're here. Like look at how many people, and it's not necessarily their fault because programming, but look at how many people, young people, don't want to get married, don't want to have kids because they're all focused on
Which I
money and
don't I
stuff.
don't blame them on that. No, but it's
You
not. I
know?
don't know if it's focused on money. I think what nowadays is that people are understanding that fucking like legal marriage. Like I'm telling you right now, dude, I will never legally marriage anybody. Like signing my shit into courts ever again.
Well,
No.
no, that's not what I'm not talking
I'm
about.
putting this. I'm putting this on the podcast right now. I will spiritually connect to the woman I'm supposed to be with, but I will never sign legal documents because our fucking court systems are garbage and they're fucking corrupt, and I'll never do it again.
Dang, the CIA's after you now,
Oh
buddy.
yeah, yeah, they
But
can
no,
suck a
yeah,
dick. I don't give a fuck.
I'm talking more about the broader concept of mankind and how, like, we're talking about control, we're talking about energy, and how everything is like they're trying to destroy. Like, I'm not saying I agree to a certain extent with what you're saying, right? But like,
Well, you don't have to agree. You can always disagree. I
no, I
love you
don't
as a brother,
disagree.
but you can
I
always
agree with
disagree with
you.
me.
I agree with you because I'm saying I think that as humans we should be able to be married without having legal documents because they are bullshit. Because it's a power grab. It's a control mechanism.
Because all you do is you give over your life, basically your life, like your relationship, right? So you
It's
sign
like
these
a business.
papers, you give it to them.
It's like they make it a business
It's a
deal.
business. No, it's a business. So you give them this money to sign papers, and then if it I'm not saying I don't want it to work out, but if it doesn't work out, then you have to give them more money, and then oftentimes have attorneys and all this shit because, dude, okay,
Yeah, man.
look at the bigger
It's like
picture.
it's the system. That's what I'm
Look at the
saying.
bigger
It's a different
picture.
level.
So think about, so if you get married, okay, fine, you pay one fee, that's fine. You get married, you're done, right? If your shit doesn't work out, both people usually hire attorneys, money. Both people fucking have to pay court fees, money. Both those attorneys are usually fucking shady as fuck, and they're usually fucking like best friends with the attorney, with the fucking judge. It's all money. Listen, when I was a SWAT medic, when I was going through all these things and I was arresting people, I was doing these things, we were doing shit, right? And I will say, and I will speak this out to truth in Merced County. Fucking, we had I'm not gonna say the DA's name, but he's no longer the DA. He was shady as fuck. And like literally we would go into court cases where we knew certain things should be done, but because he was having drinks with the judges and, probably fucking some of the whoever, like none of our shit would ever get done. So this is what I tell people. I don't give a fuck. Like they can come and arrest me right now, but like I want people to understand that these court systems are the most corrupt bullshit systems in the world. Hey, my son just became a deputy in the county here in California, and I already told him. I was like, please be aware and please be fucking conscious of the fact that there's a lot of shady shit here. Um, because when I was, when I was in law enforcement, we were doing shit. I'm like, I was always like, fuck you, I'm not doing it. No, fuck you. And, I was always, even though they love me as a person, they're like, oh, you don't follow what we do. I was like, you're right. I don't follow what you do. You guys are fucking shady. Like,
Well,
fuck
I
you guys, dude.
well, I agree with you that the system's fucked, right? But what the concept I was getting at was like it is the system because what I mean by what I was saying earlier about my opinion as to why people don't want to get married and why people don't want to have children. I think yes, the system, of course, overall the system has a thing to do with it, but it's the system, the bigger system, that's pushing everyone to like the agenda, like they don't want traditional family type stuff, or like the values are being diminished. So it's like, oh, I got to make a lot of money and I got to do this, I got to do this. But the true meaning to why we're here, a part of it as a human, is to make more humans, and that's like the most, in my opinion, like okay, yeah, the marriage thing, I agreed with that because my wife and I have talked about it, and we've been married for almost 10 years. Like, yeah, we just signed a fucking stupid piece of paper. So at the flip side, if you want to love somebody, why do you have to sign a piece of paper, right? So
That's
you're
my
almost
thing, though. Like,
you're
so
almost
why
kind of
is your connection based on a piece of paper? Like, that's what I tell people. I'm like, so that's why literally it's funny because I was told my mom was like, I said the next time I go forward into a full commitment like that, it's going to be a spiritual connection. Like, we can go have a spiritual ceremony, make it beautiful, do whatever, but I will never fucking, and I'm going to put this on camera, never sign any kind of legal document again, you know? Never. Because I already know. It's not worth it. There's no,
because the
there's no
system, man.
purpose.
Like,
It's a
like I was
system.
telling,
There's no purpose.
dude, I was telling my wife, I was like last night, I was like, dude, like when I was younger, when you're programmed, you're like, I used to get mad at people talking shit about the United States, and now, at this point in my life, like I am totally different, and I'm like, oh no, now I'm the hippie, you know?
You're not a hippie. You're just awakened. And that's the thing, though, man. It's like, and I love that, though. That's why, like I said, like, when I met you and I talked to you, the first day I talked to you, I saw like your energy and who you were. And my thing is like, you were 11 years in the military. And I'm like, but you understand a deeper concept. And that's what I love because you knew. And that's the thing is like, I've had so many friends and people over the years um, that were so like driven by it. And I'm like, just please wake up. Like, please understand they don't care about you. Um, and then the same thing with me with law enforcement. When I first was into it, and I thought like, man, this is a great thing. Like, oh, all this shit. And then I started getting deeper into the politics of it. I was like, wow. I was like, you motherfuckers are corrupt. I was like, wow. You know what I mean? Like I knew it, and I started pulling away. That's why at one point that I was a SWAT medic, and then I stopped. I stopped responding. I stopped going, and they were like, "Hey, what's up? Like you're not fulfilling your stuff." And I was like, "Because you guys are fucking corrupt SWAT." I was like, "That's cool." I was like, "I'm going back to just being a medic. Like I'm done. I'm just gonna do my thing. Like I'm done with you guys." Um, because I was very okay with fucking like they could like talk shit all they want, but this is horseshit, you know. And
Yeah,
I think
man.
that's the
'Cause
thing with you too. I think this thing with you too is like well, from when I met you, I saw like the real you, and I was like, yeah, no, this guy fucking understands shit. Like
That's why, like, when they're talking about the draft and or the not the draft, the selective service and blah blah blah. I'm like, I just know in my soul, like, I don't care. When my son's old
Yeah.
enough, I'm gonna be like, you're not. I don't care. I'll go to jail. I don't care. Like,
Yeah. No
you're
shit.
not going because, and it's because, like you said, like, I was in for 11 and a half years, dude. I've seen how the system operates, and nothing against military service because I think there's a lot of great men and women who serve, but it's the higher level echelon of people
It's
that
not
don't
about the
give a
people
fuck
that
about.
serve. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not about the people that serve. I think there's a ton of amazing people that serve. Um, and I honestly think that they go in with a really good intention.
a lot of people do. A lot of people think,
But
"Oh, I'm serving my
no,
country because
no,
we're
I
fighting for
know, no,
good
I
and blah blah
know,
blah,"
no, I
and then
know.
years later you
But
find out that it's all jacked up.
yes, but my biggest thing is that you're being lied to. You know, like that's my thing, man. Like that's my thing. It's like it's not about
Yeah.
the fact that like you guys, it's like my son. You guys all went in with the best intention, and you've been fucking fucked over and lied to, and that's my thing. And that's I'm sorry, but that's my thing. And that's the thing is like I said, like with my son, like even now, like in law enforcement, I told him as he went into this in law enforcement, he goes, "Well, Dad, you were in law enforcement." I said, "Yeah." I said, I just want to tell you right now. I said it's a very fucking political, corrupt fucking system. I
See,
said if I told him I said it's a step down from the military. I said same shit. This is the same fucking shit. And I said you're gonna get the same fucking thing. And he was just like, well, I know, but you know, because he took it as because it's an easy job because of him being in the military. And I told him, I said, I'm telling you fucking right now, dude. I go, you're gonna fucking see that you're not gonna like it. I go, but whatever, do what you want to do.
well, you know what? Maybe he'll find an aspect he does like helping people. Like, yeah, I can
Well,
actually,
I told him, I said, you know, I go when I was in law enforcement, I said, you know, people always fucking, or even well, law enforcement and EMS, I said, you know, people always love me because I was always like very fair to people. I was always very fair to people, and like you know, if they were respectful, I was respectful, and I would work with them, and I would like help people, like, hey, let's work you out so you don't have to fucking be stuck in this bullshit like system, you know. And I would work with a lot of people to get them out of that
dude,
system.
that's the
And
common
people
trend, man.
would.
That's the common trend. What we're saying, pretty
I'm
much
gonna go
in
pee. I'm
everything that
listening.
we're saying, is that the system is the thing to blame for all of these crazy freaking things that are going on, man.
Well,
Like,
but like yeah, well, like, and the fucking judicial system is fucking garbage. You know, it's a fucking business.
yeah, dude,
They make they literally receive. I can't give you like the exact number. I want to say like the last time I heard it was like $52,800 per fucking prisoner. The judicial system receives that shit as a business, and I'm like, so why the fuck? What the fuck? So we're imprisoning people to make money,
yeah. How the
you
hell does
know?
that work? It's just like when someone goes to serve public office and they come in, and they leave and they have millions of dollars. It's like, how the hell does that work?
That's what I'm saying. So how is it that we're fucking like giving money out because we have people in jail? Come on now. But then the bigger thing is, this is the bigger thing. Since fucking COVID went on, they're releasing, they say non-violent offenders, they're releasing violent offenders, and then they're keeping in people that fucking like have like a weed charge. Bitch, I don't
Dude,
give a fuck if you've done weed, shrooms, fucking like, you know, fucking ran across the street. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care. You cannot tell me you're charging people for shit because they fucking like have done some minor shit. You know what's crazy? And this I'll always remember this. So when the whole COVID thing was, do you remember when the whole COVID thing was going on? They were releasing a bunch of criminals.
no, I don't. No, I don't remember that. I
You
might
know,
have seen
yo,
it.
okay.
I don't
So maybe
remember.
maybe it was just in California. Maybe it was just California. But So I had my business, which was like 2 minutes from my house. And I remember my ex-wife and I and my kids, and we were all there. Man, I remember I used to get up early. I had to be there by 4 a.m. every day. I got up. I had my big ass truck, which could have fucking literally run over both these motherfuckers. And I remember I was like fucking pulling around fucking like my street like to go to my business, which is like 2 minutes away, 2 or 3 minutes away. And there was these two dudes walking the street, like, they're all tattooed up. They thought they were all tough. It's like fucking this is like just before 4 in the morning. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, listen, when I was young, and I've told you this story, when I was young, I hung out with a really fucking tough fucking gang and crowd. And I'm like, if I was the old me, I would just like monster over both of you and just keep going. Because
Yeah.
they were walking in the middle of the street. They were walking in the middle of the street and they like looked back like at me, like fucking like, like
They're
I
like,
was
what the fuck
nothing.
you
And I'm
want?
like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, I was like, I could literally just punch you both over. And I just fucking threw my hands up. I'm like, hey, get the fuck out of the street. And they finally both moved over. You could tell they were older dudes too. And they were just like, but they were probably just released because they were releasing people from fucking jail here. Like, oh, these guys are okay. These guys are okay. They're acting like this.
Yeah.
Like, I love people. I love people.
Just don't be a dick.
At that, yeah, no, seriously. At that moment, if I would have had my handguns on me, I probably would have shot both of them and just kept going. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, guys. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But it's just frustrating with people. It's like people like, okay, you were just released from jail. So why wouldn't your intention be like, maybe I should be a little bit better and just try to move forward, you know? But these guys just they come out just being assholes. And I'm like, hey, and especially because when I was younger, I hung out with like a really tough gang and I learned like I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be like that. Um, these people just don't get it. And I'm like, dude, like what I also don't understand is that well, I think a lot of these guys don't understand is that as things are changing right now, you're gonna have a lot of people like on the street, like all of us that are out here like armed, and you guys are coming out thinking you're badass, and everybody's gonna start getting executed. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Well, that's an
you're an
extreme.
ass, huh?
That's a little bit of an extreme. But yeah, if it
Well, no,
escalates,
no, 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 no,
yeah.
no, no. I don't want to. I don't want to do it. But what I'm saying is if you think about how, so if things start to change where they're just releasing people and things are coming out,
Yeah, that's just going to
and
create
there's
chaos.
yeah,
It's
because
going to
if
do.
these guys are coming out, if these guys come out with a very a violent mentality, and there's all of us that are just out here trying to like do good, and they come into our yards and stuff, what are we gonna do? It's gonna be like fucking Walking Dead. That's what I swear. No, I swear to God, like it really is. That's
Yeah.
what it's gonna be. It's just gonna be like just bam, 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 and everybody's dead. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of these like shows and stuff like show truth.
Yeah. I feel like what you're talking about is the same thing I feel or everybody feels with frustration with just how people like that's the thing, man. Like these people who make in these positions that make all these decisions that affect the rest of us don't consider the rest of us. They're just like, oh, what's gonna
Well,
make me
they
a little
don't care because
more
they're
money?
safe in a certain place. They're safe in a certain place. So then all of a sudden they put people out here on the streets and they're like, hey, these people might like, threaten your way of life. Well, those of us that are trained and armed, I mean, what's gonna happen? I mean, which I'm not saying, like I said, like I don't want to do any of that. I honestly, I can put this on the podcast. I don't want to do anything to anybody. But if I feel a threat to my family, like, yeah, you're not gonna live very long, you know?
And that's
So
the constant battle of mankind is good versus evil.
yeah, yeah.
Because that's I guess maybe that's the only kind of like line to draw is like we're spiritual beings. We're not supposed to kill anybody. We're not supposed to hurt each other. but at the same time, we have this inherent need to protect everyone around us that we love because how to. So
You know
like
what? You know what it reminds me of?
you know,
Have you ever seen the movie Boondock Saints?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, I love that movie.
yeah,
Like those fuckers, they
yeah.
love God. They're connected, but they're like, hey, I'm out here fucking taking people out. It's like
Doing
these
the Lord's
assholes. I'm
work.
taking them out. Yeah, and there's times where I just wonder. I'm like, man, I'm like fucking. Do I gotta fucking just like start executing people and just moving on? It's like never because I want to, but just because I have to. So
Well, I don't
who
think you have to
knows?
start anytime soon, sir.
Well, I don't want to start too much. I'm not gonna start today.
Like, you know what? It's 5 o'clock.
I'm all, hey Nate, podcast over. Here we go.
Be like, North Carolina and California, man, do the same crime in two different states at the same time.
He's a so they take out these murderers like in a heartbeat. It's like, yeah, here we go. Hell yeah.
But see, that's the interesting. That's the interesting. That's a tricky spot with mankind, right? Because we preach love and light and all this other stuff. I guess it goes back to why we're called warriors of light. Because your example, I mean, it's not the best one.
It's a joke. I'm just saying.
I know, but like the concept behind it is, and it's from the system itself, is like you put everybody else that are trying to do good, and you're putting everybody in danger. So what do you expect good people? Like the worst thing you can do is piss off a good person, right?
Yeah.
Because that person works so hard to do everything right that they think is right, whatever, and then all of a sudden they get fucked with, and you're like, okay, well, then those are the people that lose their shit even more,
Yeah.
because it's like you worked so hard for all this stuff, like family, which is most important, and like your home, you gave your family a home or whatever, and like, and then someone, no matter who it is going to come and threaten that. It's like, yeah, what do you think we're going to do?
That's the point. It's like, we're trying to do our best to spread love and light. And then, if you have those moments, it's like, what are you gonna do? Stand for yourself, right? I mean, you should.
Yeah,
You
I
have
mean,
to. You have to. Unfortunately, you have to. I mean, and I say unfortunately because it's like, unfortunately, you may have to take a life, but it's like
it
they're
isn't.
coming
You know
at
what's
you.
funny about I mean, it's not funny, but it's interesting because, dude, everything that we're talking about is stuff I've been experiencing the last 2 weeks, except for wanting to having prisoners walk in front of my truck. But um, it's interesting because it's like the way that people who don't have the veil over their eyes anymore, right? The way that we
Hmm.
think, we see issues. Like we're like when I was watching The Walking Dead, and I'm like, oh, if you would have just done this, you wouldn't have had to kill these people or something like that. So it's like we always have a choice, but sometimes you don't. And when you're forced to do something because the situation doesn't give you many options, it's like that's the tricky part about mankind, right? Like, what do you do?
Well, it's what's crazy about when I look at that movie Hacksaw Ridge, and I'm like, he stuck to what he believed. So I don't know.
It's like a duality of our existence. Just like you said,
Yeah.
heaven and hell could be on earth. It's whatever you create.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing with anything. It's like it could be negative, it could be positive. It depends on how you react. But
Yeah.
sometimes it requires a swift reaction. I
No.
don't know.
Yeah. And it could. No. And it could. And that's the thing is like I do my best to not live that way, but I do know and believe that I do know and believe that at some point that it could come to that, you know? So
I think that's what a lot of people don't want, because I think it's the writing. Like, it seems like the writing is on the wall. Like everyone, like in the news, like, oh, World War III and fucking blah 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 in America, and blah blah blah. And it's like, I think the people who don't like. I think there's more people who don't want it to happen than do, obviously. But I
Of
also think there's
course.
people that don't understand that. Yeah, this is a possibility. You know, like these other
Yeah.
podcasts have been talking about, like, are we going to go to a civil war? And it's like, I fucking hope not. That would be horrible.
Well, no shit. I mean, that's the thing is, I think that that's the whole thing is that, I mean, do we want to get to that point? No, obviously not. But um,
But
I ain't coming close.
it's like you
I ain't
said,
coming close.
bring in the new. You got to get rid of the old.
Well, you have to remove. You have to remove what's not supposed to be there anymore. Like, how can you bring in the new if you don't remove the old, right?
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes it gets to extreme points. But like you said earlier, the night is darkest just before the dawn. So,
Nope. That's where we put our focus.
well, everybody,
Well, we appreciate you guys. I appreciate you, Mr. Nate.
I appreciate you, Mr. Brian. Everybody, like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and we'll see
Heck
you in
yeah.
the next